Welcome back to This Week in Film. It's the weekly podcast where we get together, we talk about the movies we've seen, and I forgot the rest of the intro.
In the past 7 days, I'm Nick Panunto, joined as always by Midwest Matt Lauer. Matt, how's it going? It's going great, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Matt. Thanks a lot. Happy birthday to you.
Thanks. And to you, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. It's that time of year. It's that time of year where I turn 23 again. And, Matt, I assume you've seen some movies since we've last spoke?
You're partly right. I have seen one movie since we last spoke.
Oh, good, because I've also seen one movie.
Cool. I saw Clash of the Titans. What did you see?
Oh, which Clash of the Titans?
The 2010 atrocity.
Oh, okay.
Spoiler alert.
I watched Spiderman Far From Home.
Oh, okay, cool.
So, I guess we'll save that for last, because we're going to spoil it.
All right.
Since we've both seen it.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I think I'm probably going to spoil Clash of the Titans, too.
Oh, please do.
All right. Now, Nick, don't think too hard about this. I just want you to check on something. Or I want to check on something. How old do you think this movie is? What year would you say the new Clash of the Titans came out?
Well, since you just told me.
Did I?
You did.
Oh, never mind then.
2010?
Well, that's a good guess, Nick. If I had asked you before I told you, do you have a sense of when you would have guessed it was?
I probably would have said 2013. 2010 seems really, really far away ago.
Yeah, and I would have guessed, like, this came out 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had a sequel a couple years ago, right?
A sequel to Clash of the Titans?
Yeah, there's definitely a second one.
Are you serious?
Yeah. 100% serious.
Well, I did not know about that at all. I think that I assumed somehow that this came out around the same time as Gods of Egypt.
Uh-huh.
And I did not know that there was a... What? Do you know what the sequel was?
No. I'll use my internet machine while you discuss.
Well, okay. So, yeah, I was just kind of looking for something, Karina, and I was like, I gotta watch a movie before tomorrow because we scheduled a podcast, and I probably should talk about something on it.
Uh-huh. Breaking news. It was Wrath of the Titans.
I have never even heard of that.
From 2010.
It came out in the theater?
I'm sorry, 2012. It looks like it. It has the same cast. Liam Neeson's in it. Sam Worthington, Ralph Fiennes.
I am shocked. I really... and it came out 2 years after, so that's not that recent either. Yeah. I mean, I would have been surprised if you told me this movie came out in 2012. So anyway, in 2010, a movie came out called Clash of the Titans, and it stars all those people that Nick just mentioned, along with Mads Mikkelsen and
really?
And Sir Davos from Game of Thrones.
Oh, the Onion Knight.
Yeah, exactly.
Whose real name I have no idea.
You know what? And I knew what it was from looking in the IMDb and decided just to write Sir Davos anyway. Because I was like, nobody's going to know the name of this guy. I really like him, though. He's my favorite actor whose name I don't know. But I find him very likable. Kind of like the way I like the guy that played Leon the Professional.
Oh, Jean Reno?
Yeah, they remind me of each other. And seem to have similar charm. If you told me they were brothers, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So anyway, this story. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you get into it, I've never seen any Clash of the Titans movie.
Really?
Like I never saw the original. I didn't see the remake or its sequel.
Now, see, I that flabbergasts me because I thought that everybody watched Clash of the Titans in school, like the original. I just thought everybody saw it and that everybody had seen it that way. But Karina had never seen it either, and I was really surprised then. I'm extra surprised that you didn't see it because we went to the same school system.
Right. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've never seen it. Maybe we saw some clips, but when we were doing it's Greek mythology, right?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe we watched some clips, but I'm pretty sure I never watched the whole thing.
Well, I don't remember it very well, other than that, it's a lot of stop motion stuff. And that was a 1981 movie, so that kind of makes me feel pretty old because I was like, oh, that's super old movie. And I'm like, oh, I'm that old.
It's only 23 years ago.
Exactly. So anyway, this movie starts off with some exposition, like here are who the gods are, and Zeus created man, and man's rising against the gods, and all this sort of stuff. And basically says that Zeus had a son. Actually, some of this exposition that I'm going into now comes up later, because there are quite a few moments in this movie where they're like, hey, how about some more exposition? Oh, you thought that exposition was over? Nope. Here's some more. And so Zeus at some point disguised himself as some woman's husband so that he could bang her.
Like a mortal?
Yeah. And, that's rape. So Zeus raped someone.
We've all been there.
I don't know that we have. But, Zeus and dang it, who's that guy? Now I can't remember. Now he's a judge. That guy that became a judge by raping somebody.
Kavanaugh?
Yeah, that's the guy. Because that was popular with some people. So, anyway, Zeus. Kavanaugh's not in the movie, but I assume he was there.
He helped hold her down.
Oh.
I'm not laughing at. I'm laughing at the comment, not the horribleness of the act
of rape. That's good. So Zeus rapes this woman, and she has a kid, and so the kid's half mortal, and then the guy who Zeus was pretending to be, not surprisingly, isn't too excited about it. He's not real happy.
That she's pregnant or that she had the kid?
That Zeus pretended to be him and had sex with his wife.
Oh, I missed. Oh, okay. I totally missed that part. So Zeus dressed up as some actual guy.
Yeah, that's how he did the rape. He did pretending to be somebody else.
So this dude was at work and Zeus showed up dressed as Tom, and he's like, hey, let's bang. And she's like, of course, you're my husband.
Yeah, something like that.
I imagine that's how it goes, right?
Well, yeah, and I appreciate you filling in the name because I had forgotten.
It's that ancient Greek name, Tom.
So Tom then kills his wife. Yeah. I don't know why he was angry at her because, it wasn't her fault.
She shamed the family.
Maybe that's his logic. But he kills her and the baby, but the baby doesn't die because, baby's half god.
Is this baby, is it Hercules?
You know what? The answer to that's going to be yes, but the real answer to that's no. His name is Perseus, but okay. I've been calling him Hercules for the past 24 hours. Because this morning, Karina was like, hey, so how'd the movie end? Because she went to sleep about halfway through it. And I was explaining to her the rest of the movie, and she's like, his name's Perseus. I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep calling him Hercules. So Hercules.
Yeah. I hate to keep interrupting you, but we have nothing but time. Is Hercules a Greek god, or is he like a Roman?
We had that conversation too, and no, he's Greek. Hercules is also, half mortal, son of Zeus. So I guess he and Perseus are half brothers, or Perseus. Hercules is not in this movie, though.
Okay.
In spite of the fact that I'm going to keep saying he is. So anyway, so then this this baby's lives, and so he gets sort of adopted parents one way or another. I don't really remember. Becomes a fisherman, doesn't know that he's half god. And
so his real father abandons him, or his mom's husband abandons him.
His mom's husband tries to kill him.
Oh, and he can't do it.
He tries to drown his wife and the baby.
Right.
The wife dies. The baby lives because the baby's part
in this family film.
Yeah. Well, no, this is a PG-13 movie, and
this is all the first 3 minutes of the movie.
If that. So anyway, and in the exposition, they're like, and then man rebelled against Zeus, and I'm like, did that already happen? Or is that what this movie's about? Is this about to happen? Is that the plot of this movie, or are you just passing by something? Turns out it's the former. This is that this movie is that. And you think you're about to see it happening because, like, Zeus or Hercules or Perseus, we'll call him Hercules. Hercules' dad, adopted dad, is literally saying, it's time we stand up. Somebody needs to stand up to these stupid gods. And then just as he says that, they're like, hey, wait, look, those people overthrowing the gods. And you're like, well, that's interesting timing. And these warriors are, I guess Greek warriors, are trying to destroy one of the statues, sculpture of Zeus. And so they do. They break it down. It falls off into the ocean. And as soon as they do, and you're like, well, there's that uprising that guy was just talking about, it gets quashed. Hades comes out of the water, and Hades, played by Ralph Fiennes, doing the voice of Voldemort. And he throws some, like, pretty much, except he's like, Hercules Perseus. What did I say his name was?
Hercules.
Yeah, there we go. So he throws some bat people at these guys, and they die. And then you're like, oh, the uprising didn't actually work. But then he also destroys the boat that Perseus / Hercules and his parents are on, and they die. So he's angry. He's like, Hades killed my parents. But that's not why he uprises.
So I'm looking at the cast, and Sam Worthington is Perseus.
Yes.
And he's the dude from Avatar, right?
Yeah, that's right. And Terminator Salvation.
He's in that movie too.
Yeah, he's the Terminator that, like, who thinks he's human, and they told you that in the preview, but for some reason it's supposed to be a big reveal in the movie.
Man, he was everywhere in 2009.
Yeah, he was popular for a little bit, or like someone wanted him to be popular.
Yeah,
and he was in big things, but I don't think he actually caught on. So Hercules is trying to find. I guess he gets dragged somehow into this like big palace meeting thing, and you're like, why is this fisherman here? Like, why is he actually taken to this thing? I get maybe he was rescued off the boat, but there's no reason for him to be at this big event.
Mm-hmm.
And his motivating factor is not that Hades killed his parents. He's not like, all right, I'm going to lead some uprising against Hades because he killed my parents. It's that at this big event in the palace, while he's still dressed like in a potato sack, meaning he's got really poor clothes on and doesn't belong there at all. What's her name? Andromeda, who's supposed to be this beautiful woman, and her mom, she's a princess. Her mom's a queen and her dad's a king. they start trash talking the gods, and especially her mom. Her mom's like, my daughter's more beautiful than the most beautiful goddess, so fuck these gods.
Uh-huh.
And of course they're like immediately there. They're like, screw this. And Hades is like, oh, we're going to mess these people up. And he kills the mom and the dad. And he's like, you, young lady, you're going to pay for the sins of your parents. So in 10 days, for some reason, in an arbitrary 10 days, I'm going to unleash the Kraken on your ass. And so Hercules is sent out to...
I'm mostly laughing at the play on words of ass and crack.
Fair enough. It's unintentional. So anyway, Hercules is sent out, or decides to go out with a few people to stop this whole Kraken thing from happening.
Does he have any superpowers?
Well, it's not long after this that he finds out that he's part god. Okay. And it's all handed to him very quickly in terms of information, and he doesn't like the idea, but he's like, well, we're going to stop this Kraken because I'm friends with Andromeda, I guess. And he's also got this female friend, Io, who way later in the movie, she's like, he says, we've been friends forever. You've been by my side since the very beginning. And I'm like, she was? Weren't you a fisherman? Isn't she some important lady? I don't get this. And somehow I missed that in the movie, but they're friends. Anyway, she goes on this journey with him along with Mads Mikkelsen and these other like warriors who want to fight the gods and see him as a way to do that because he's part god. Mm-hmm. And they want him to like use his god power. They're like, hey, you're a demigod, use it. And he's like, no, I'm going to do this as a man. I don't want that god sword that you have for some reason. And I don't want this other special god thing that you guys seem to have for some reason. I don't remember what it was, but it was something. And so he's trying to refuse these sort of like god gifts. He's like, I don't want these things. I'm just going to fight him as a man. And Mads Mikkelsen and the men are like, yeah, but we kind of like, we're men. So since you're a demigod, we want you to use anything you've gotten. And he's just trying not to become like the gods. So he's like, no. And then so the guy who killed his wife and tried to kill Hercules, he's been sort of egged on by Hades to be like, hey, kill them again. You didn't kill him well enough, so hunt him down. And so at some point, he kind of attacks these guys, this crew of people, and there are these giant scorpions that come out of his blood, and it's kind of weird. There's a lot of dialogue and little action, like little moments of events where it's like, that was really unnecessary and doesn't make sense. And in this moment, there's one where they're like, hey, Hercules is like, hey, team of warriors, we need to split up to catch this guy. Follow the trail of blood. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you're splitting up, how are you splitting up if you're all following the trail of blood? Because y'all are going to be right on top of each other sniffing out the blood. Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. And then 2 seconds later, they catch the guy anyway. But then they see the blood, and they're like, oh, it's disappearing into the sand. I'm like, well, how did you just follow it then? How did you follow the blood? Right. But then the blood turns into these giant scorpions, so they just, distraction. You don't need to go through the logic of that, because who cares? They're turning into giant scorpions. And this is where I admit I enjoyed this movie, because there were giant scorpions, and apparently that's all I need. And that's how this movie goes. It's like, this is dumb as hell, giant monster, and I'm like, all right, I'm on board. Mm-hmm. They're
giant scorpions?
Oh, yeah, super giant.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Well, and then at some point in this, it gets kind of confusing, and there's bad logic, but again, giant scorpions, so I don't really care. But there are these, like, remember in Game of Thrones, those guys that are sort of turning into stone because they have that stone skin disease, but they don't quite die, and they're like
grayscale zombies?
Yeah. there are some dudes that are kind of like that, and they seem to be controlling the scorpions, but they are not that guy. So this guy's blood turns into these scorpions, but then the scorpions are the pets of these grayscale dudes who join them. And they're like, yeah, we're on your side, Hercules, not you, other warriors, because we don't like men. But since Hercules may be able to kill the gods, we're going to support him. So we're going to work with you. And so they do for like 20 minutes, and then they go on their way.
How far into the movie is it at this point?
Now we're probably about 35 minutes into the movie.
Oh, my God.
And this is where, and this is where it kind of, I don't know, starts to take off a little bit more, I guess, because they're like...
Really? It gets better?
Well... The scorpion guys, like I said, they join them for about 20 minutes. Then they just kind of wander. They're like, we're going to screw off. We're going to go somewhere else. Except for one of them who's like, I'm going to join you to kill Medusa. Because you're going to need Medusa's head. Oh, wait, hold on. First they have to meet some witches and kill the witches. No, they don't kill them. They kind of fight with them. And then Hercules is like, hey, look, witches, we came here so you could tell me how to kill Medusa. Or no, to tell me how to kill the Kraken. And then the witches are like, okay, you can kill the Kraken by getting Medusa to kill him. And then they're like, Medusa doesn't exactly do what people tell her to do. And he's like, yeah, but we could use her head. And the witches are like, you're a clever boy. And he's like, yeah, I'm as clever as a velociraptor. And so, anyway, he plans to chop off her head and take that to the Kraken. And they do. Everyone, spoiler, I know I'm spoiling the whole thing, but like, spoiler, whatever. Everyone dies. Except for Hercules. Perseus. And, including Io. So she can't go into Medusa's lair, but she's hanging out outside. He goes, everyone dies. He gets Medusa's head. He comes outside. He's like, yeah, I got her head. Check out this bag with her head in it. And then all of a sudden, because she's like, oh, wow, good job getting the head. And she's stabbed by the guy that was trying to kill Hercules, like his stepdad.
His
mom's
husband.
Yeah.
He just shows up out of nowhere.
He showed up before. He was the one who had scorpion blood.
Oh, right. Okay.
So he shows up again, and he's like, ha, stabbed your woman. And she dies. And that whole thing is ridiculous, because she's like, I've been with... she's like, you need to go kill the gods, like the eclipse, the 10th day, it's all about to happen. And he's like, no, I won't leave you. You've been with me since the beginning. And I went, she was? And he said, yeah, because he talked to me. And then she turns into light dust and disappears. And he's like, well, I guess I better go on. But before she dies, like, does the whole death scene, when the guy stabs her, he fights with the guy first. And then when he kills him with the god sword that he refused to use. And so meanwhile, all these guys are dying and he's refusing to use this. And finally he's just like, yeah, all right, fine, I'll use it. And all those dead guys must be like in their graves or Hades or heaven or wherever, or Olympus. They must just be like, you motherfucker. you refused to use this shit the whole time. And then you finally use it, you dick. And along the way... Sorry, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but along the way, at some point, Zeus just pops up and is like, hey, Hercules. And he's like, what? What do you want? And he's like, I just came down to check on you. You should really use our weapons and stuff. By the way, also, you should come to Olympus. I really disowned you and was kind of pissed off that, like, the humans weren't worshiping us. So, like, I really made this whole deal with Hades. But you know what? By the way, I'm on your side. And he's like, no thanks.
And Zeus is Liam Neeson, right?
That is right. And and so Hercules is just like, whatever. No thanks. And then Zeus is like, all right, okay, I'll go back up to Olympus now. And it really, it's like a 20-second conversation. Like I said, there's a lot that happens in this movie where it's just thrown in. And the movie reads like someone's reading a Wikipedia page, and they just wanted to hit all the names so that they could say they did their job. So there's just everyone's introducing each other with their names and be like, oh, yeah, by the way, Artemis, good job being here in this scene. So anyway, back to where I was with this guy killing Io. So Hercules kills him, and as he's dying, this guy, who all we know about him is that he has wanted Hercules dead, and that he's been hooking up with Hades, not like having sex with him, but like hanging out. Well, they might have, who knows. As he's dying, he's like, Hercules, don't turn into one of them. And there's no insight at all into what that means or why he's come to this conclusion. It's like, was he under a spell and he just came out of it because he got stabbed with this god sword, so he's like come to his senses? We've never seen him not be a jerk, so it doesn't make any sense. And then he's dead, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. So Hercules moves on and gets back to, now that he's got Medusa's head and everything, he gets back to town, where, I guess Athens, wherever this is all going down, where they've decided, the people have decided, we're just going to sacrifice Andromeda to the Kraken because we fear the gods. And so he gets there just as the Kraken's showing up. And the Kraken... Now, see, I always thought of the Kraken as just a giant squid type thing. But the Kraken's like a cross between a squid and a cave troll and a crab. And it's like this huge thing. It's coming out of the water, and it's getting ready to eat her. And it's like, roar, and then Hercules flies his black Pegasus up to there, because he gets a Pegasus along the way.
Of course.
Yeah, and he's like, here's Medusa's head. And so the Kraken freezes and dies and almost kills a bunch of people because it's falling apart now that it's this giant stone thing. So whoops. And then Hades shows up. So this is like the guy who put everything in motion, right? So it's kind of like in like Lethal Weapon or something like that, where it's like you just killed Gary Busey, like the not the main bad guy, but like the heavy.
Yeah.
And now it's time for the big showdown with the main guy. The one who I mean, the Kraken was his pet. So he shows up. And he says, Hercules, you son of a bitch. I will live forever. Actually, literally, I just added more words, because all he says is, I will live forever. This is the big showdown. I can't emphasize enough how much drama there is in this moment. So he says, I will live forever. And Hercules goes, yeah, but not here. And he throws his sword at him, and it just drives him into the ocean, and he disappears.
That's it?
The big confrontation is literally 5 seconds at most. And, yeah. And then, so it's like, yay, he saved Andromeda. Woo! And Andromeda's like, hey, how about you be king here? Because, I'm just a princess. Even though my parents are dead, I'm actually a queen. But we need a ruler. And he's like, look, this isn't really my deal. And she's like, you're not going to come back, are you? And he's like, no. And I'm like, wait a minute. Isn't his character arc that he's supposed to realize he's a demigod, then decide to be a human?
Uh-huh.
But it's like, oh, no. Apparently, no. He's going to move on. But then Zeus shows. So you're like, well, this is a weird, resolution of this character arc. It's not really resolved. But then Zeus pops up. And Zeus is like, hey, so you going to come back to Olympus now? You want to give that a second thought? And he's like, nope. It's like, okay, what is this guy deciding to do? And so he says no. And then Zeus is like, well, you know what? No son of mine is going to be on this planet not getting laid. Here's your woman back. Poof. And Io comes back to life. And, hang on. I'm getting another call. I got to not do the wrong button here. There we go.
Oh God, who is it?
It's some scam.
Oh.
So anyway,
is it about your federal student loan repayment?
That is a scam.
Is it the FBI of America calling to say there's a warrant out for you?
I don't know, Nick. I'm not going to answer this one. I got more important things to do here. I got to tell you about the end. So Hercules says, no, I don't want to go back to Olympus. Zeus says, well, here's your woman back. And then they kind of just like are like they're cool now. And you know, Zeus is like, hey, sorry about raping your mom and, you know, having, you know, leading to the death of her and all this sort of issues and not dealing with the people. But, you know, he's probably got like a roll of Mentos or something so he can kind of wink and, you know, it's all good. Yeah. And Hercules is like, it's cool. You're good. And
Does
then
he call him Pop?
No, but he's, you know, I mean, the Mentos are there, so he's got to give him a smile and let him go. And then he flies off into the sunset with his new refurbished girlfriend on Black Pegasus. And everything about this movie is stupid, but I think everyone should watch it. No, I mean we did have an intermission at some point. Took a break from the movie a little bit, and I don't know if you can tolerate it if you just sit down for 2 hours straight. But it was pretty fun, and you know it's kind of like the Mummy movie with Tom Cruise, where my expectations were very low, so that probably helped a lot. But it's just kind of fun and dumb. Like this would be an enjoyable movie for you and I to do a commentary on.
Okay.
Rather than just like one we should because it's awful and you're gonna hate it the whole time. It's laughable and it's good popcorn cheese.
Oh, okay. That's
I would
cool.
not watch a sequel.
You would not watch the sequel?
I wouldn't plan on it. I don't know. Now I'm like, oh, maybe I would. I don't know.
Well, now you got to know what happens to Perseus. Like, what could happen next?
Who knows?
I think it has the same rating on IMDb.
Well, you know what? If it says that there are giant scorpions, then maybe I'll check it out. All right. But that's really all I have on that. So that's like probably 40 minutes too long telling you about it.
I enjoyed it. You know what? I didn't actually. If you mentioned it, I didn't catch it. Does the Perseus guy? Does he have superpowers?
You know, that's not exactly clear. It's he doesn't do anything that like shows him to have like superhuman strength or something. But there is definitely a moment where he falls like 100 feet or 200 feet and just is fine. So he might have like a high indestructibility to him,
right?
But other than that, I don't think there was anything suggested really.
Okay.
Yeah. So how about Spider-Man: Far From Home?
All right. So if you would like to hear a non-spoilery version of this movie, go back a couple episodes and listen to Matt's review of Spider-Man: Far From Home, because I'm going to spoil the hell out of this movie. Starting now. So, in general, I thought this movie was okay. I didn't hate it at all. I didn't love it. It's I definitely liked Spider-Man: Homecoming more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it was pretty fun. It's definitely a better than average Spider-Man movie. Like, it's better than, I mean, it's just a slight step down from Homecoming, I think. And I think the main problem that I have with it is the problem that I have in comic books when the hero goes overseas, and it just doesn't work right. Like, I always hate it. Like, whenever Batman goes to Egypt or something, yeah, like whenever like the hero leaves his main location, I'm always like, ugh, this is obnoxious. And I do appreciate in this movie how they try to they try to dance around that a little bit, where they give him the stealth suit and they call him some other hero, like the Night Dragon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I thought that was funny, and how like that continued.
Is it Night Monkey?
Night Monkey, yeah. Like I thought that was kind of funny and whatever, but for the most part, it's like how could you not realize that it's Spider-Man? He's doing all the Spider-Man things, and then I
gotta say, if you don't mind me just seconding you,
please.
I have a similar response when comic books go when you take characters out of their context.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I should enjoy that, but there's something about it where it's like, it's kind of like having a character from Friends show up in 24. It just says it doesn't quite feel right somehow. Yeah,
especially with the secret identity thing. Like a few months back, I was reading this stretch of Daredevil, and for a while, Daredevil and Black Widow kind of team up for a while. Like they're an item. Huh. They're dating and everything, and they both moved to San Francisco. And the Black Widow is the Black Widow. Everybody knows who she is. She doesn't have a secret identity. But Daredevil is Matt Murdock. And so Daredevil moves to San Francisco. But conveniently, so does Matt Murdock. And he opens a law practice, or him and Black Widow are living together. And it's just kind of like, oh, how convenient that your pal Daredevil came out here with you. And I'm just like, people are so dumb. And it really kind of breaks the fourth wall for me, where when the hero crosses the country or leaves the country altogether, and the alter ego is also there, it kind of ruins it for me. It's too incredulous, I guess, or impossible to believe. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I think kind of spoiled this movie for me is that I know too much about comics. So going into it, I think everybody knows going into it that Mysterio...
Are you about to go into spoilers?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Is that, Mysterio is the bad guy of the movie, and I feel like they try to not make that clear in the commercials. They make it seem like he's, this newer hero or whatever, but knowing everything that I know, I knew, the minute they said Mysterio, I was like, oh, Mysterio's the bad guy. And it's that kind of wastes my time. The whole first hour and 15 minutes of the movie, where you're they spend all this time trying to build him up to be this heroic figure. Mm-hmm. And I already know that everything he's doing is fake.
Well, and they don't do anything to offer another bad guy. So, I went into it, I mean, I know enough to go, Mysterio, I know the name as a bad guy, but to go, well, maybe he becomes a bad guy in a sequel, in another sequel to this or something. But then when there's no other bad guy in the movie, it's well, obviously it's him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they try to set it up a little bit with the elementals, the rock monster and the lava monster.
But there's no person driving them, and that
right. Yeah, there's.
I
no
think at this point we're too
them.
used to there being a bad guy orchestrating things that we're not going to just go, oh, they just have to solve this non-personality,
right?
Monster thing.
I feel like what they were trying to do is to get us into the mindset of Peter, where he thinks that Mysterio is this great dude, but the whole time you're like, Peter, what are you doing? You're ridiculous. How could you be so stupid to just do this? I also have a problem with the entire Mysterio plan is centered around these sunglasses that Peter Parker gets from Tony Stark.
Yeah.
How did Mysterio know that Tony Stark made these super sunglasses? 2, how did he know that Tony Stark gave Peter Parker the sunglasses? 3, how did he know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man? And his whole plan exists before Nick Fury tells Spider-Man to take off his mask and reveal his identity to Mysterio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
So like, was that, like, did Mysterio figure out that Parker was Spider-Man the whole time? Or, and they don't reveal that at all? Like, they don't share that information or how he knew? Like, what was Mysterio's original plan? Was it just to become a hero? And then he figures out that he could get these glasses from Spider-Man? I don't know.
I guess I just sort of, like, I mean, I don't want to pretend that I thought through this. But if I did, or if, like, just kind of in the background, I might just assume, or might have assumed, that, like, he just knows a lot of this stuff because he's got so much access through himself and the other people that have worked for Tony Stark that they just were privy to this stuff.
I guess.
I mean, because they have all of Tony Stark's stuff. But at the same time, it's like, well, if you guys were this close to getting personal things and have that much access, you probably could have broken into this without Peter Parker's glasses.
Yeah, you probably could have just done
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's something that I learned. This is a little outside, but the main scientist guy, like the guy who's, like, operating the drones, apparently he's Ralphie from A Christmas Story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Peter Billingsley.
Yeah. I was like, oh, neat.
Yeah, he's done a lot of, like, work, I think, directing and stuff, and he was on that Blue Collar Comedy tour. He's also a stand-up comic.
What?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
And then I love the flashback, because I love that scene in the first Iron Man where he's like, Tony Stark did this in a cave with scraps.
Yeah.
I just, anytime I can hear that, I smile. But overall, the movie was pretty fun. It was entertaining. Like the Mysterio sequences, when Mysterio turns evil and he's just straight up screwing with Spider-Man's brain.
Yeah.
Some of those sequences were kick ass.
Yeah, that's some wild stuff.
Yeah. And I was going to bring my son to see it with me, but I was like, well, he hasn't seen Endgame yet, and I don't want him to be confused about why his greatest hero is dead. So I decided not to, and I'm glad, because that sequence where the corpse of Iron Man claws out of the ground, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm glad I don't have my 6-year-old with me, because he would cry.
Yeah, he might have struggled with that one.
Yeah. And then he gets hit by the train, which cracked me up. I thought that was hysterical. I didn't expect him to be just kind of okay after that. Like he gets hit by the train, and then he shows up, like, climbing up the side of it. So, it's a comic book. Nobody's ever dead, but especially not the hero of the movie. And then at the end, when he, like, runs out of spider webs and he's got to fight Mysterio using his spider sense, or Peter Tingle, which was a joke that just didn't land for me.
No, and they just kept trying it.
They kept trying it, yeah. I mean, Spidey sense is just so much better. It's just a better phrase. But all I could think the whole time he was doing the original, when he was really getting screwed with, I just dropped the thing. When he's really getting screwed with, and the Iron Man monster comes out of the ground and all that stuff, all I could think was there's an episode of Batman, the animated series, where Batman's fighting some bad guy who can alter reality a little bit. Like he makes, like, the world turn upside down and messes with your inner ear and all this stuff. And Batman figures out that the best way to defeat him is to just close his eyes and just run towards him, because then he's not
he's not taking in his senses.
Right, yeah. His brain knows that the ground isn't actually moving. It's just the other part of his brain.
It's just his eyes.
Yeah. So he just decides to stop trusting his eyes and runs forward. And I'm like, why doesn't Spider-Man do that? Like, shouldn't his, like, even though he doesn't really have, like, the traditional spider sense in this movie, shouldn't he know, like, I'm not actually being attacked by a monster here? I don't know. That's the other thing that I feel like in the new the MCU Spider-Man, they really haven't taken the time to explain is the spider sense thing, because like it shows up randomly, and then at the end of this movie during like the final battle, he's like, all right, I'm going to trust this thing that I've barely used completely.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he does, is he basically just closes his eyes and runs forward like Batman.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like he kind of works towards that. It's not done particularly well, but
yeah.
Well, and there are other things in this movie too where it's like, well, that's just not how an idiot might approach it that way, but that's not what Peter Parker is. So, like, for instance, when he calls down a drone strike on some kid, Brad or whatever, I'm like, this is stupid. And then when the drone strike comes down, like when he's like, he's a target, I'm like, that's stupid. Why would you say it that way? Why would you say that at all? And why wouldn't you just go like, delete the picture? Instead, he's like, drone strike, that sounds good. And then when the drone shows up, instead of being like, hey, Edith, call off the drone, he's like, I better do Spider-Man moves and jump out of the bus and shoot it down or whatever. I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah, that was
not. Go ahead.
Was pretty dumb. I didn't care for it.
Well, and
I really didn't care for the whole romantic rival subplot at all. Mm-hmm. It felt really forced. I mean, I liked how they introduced, like, he was some scrawny kid 5 years ago, and now he's like a buff. I guess they're supposed to be sophomores or juniors in high school, and he's like this buff dude now. Like, I was like, oh, that's a fun way to explain the blip or the snap or whatever. And but like the fact that he's like into Mary Jane, but he's like, I'm into her too, dude. So all's fair in love and war. Here's a picture of you in your underwear with a SHIELD agent.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it feels a bit like forced conflict and then forced stupid responses. Yeah. And then there's another thing too with like sort of the way he says things, that it ends up being used, but when he first says it where he's like, execute them all. Like that phrase, I'm like, when he said it, I was like, that seems weird. Like, what a weird line. And then it ends up being like, oh, that's weird because they need to use it later.
Right.
When Mysterio broadcasts that out. And I'm like, this is janky.
Yeah. It's not super well done.
How did you feel about Ned?
Oh, I totally agree with you that, like, something has happened to that kid in the last 2 years where I guess puberty finally finished with him, and he's going to be 40 for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
I really, like, I enjoyed, like, his little subplot with I guess it's supposed to be Betty Brant, but
like the girl from The Nice Guys.
Is that who that was?
Oh yeah, she was Ryan Gosling's daughter in The Nice Guys.
Oh, I've only seen Nice Guys the one time. But like, I liked their subplot where they're like, they fall in love for just the trip, and I was like, okay, but like, it got like obnoxious. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, but like, I totally agree with what you're saying about how like he looks like he's 40, and everybody in this movie looks a little too old now. Especially just to be playing high school guys. Like 3 years ago, they're totally in high school. They all look like they're in high school. But now, like, it's time to get out of high school, I think, with these characters.
The girl that plays MJ can pull off high school.
I agree there. Yeah, I do agree with that. But like, even Tom Holland is getting... Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to say he looks old, because he's not. But like, to say high school, I think, is pushing it anymore.
Yeah.
I also, I think they spent way too much time. Now, I love Martin Starr. I think he's fantastic. He's like the teacher. He's the teacher on the trip, the guy with the beard and the glasses.
Oh, with the camera and stuff.
Yeah, but like most of the stuff in this movie was terrible with him. Like I think he's like the funniest guy, but like in this movie, I was like, oh no, not more Please no more Martin Starr.
Right.
It just felt like they were like, oh, you know what did really well in the first movie is like all the interaction with the classmates. Let's get more of that in this movie because we don't have enough story to fill the whole thing. So there's just like a lot of like weird goofiness that just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Like I think it's supposed to be a fun, playful adventure movie, but it just doesn't. It doesn't work 100%, and a lot of it I just found boring.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels like a lot of it ends up being filler.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Just unnecessary because the movie doesn't have to be 2 hours long.
Yeah, like that sequence where he drops the camera in the water. I was like, well, he's like the minute it started and he was like being real careful with it. I was like, it's just gonna fall in the water,
right?
And if it doesn't fall in the water, why are we watching this? So, and it doesn't matter that it falls in the water. So why are we watching this?
Yeah, and if it does fall in the water, who are these jokes for?
Yeah.
Like, these are not kids' movies. The Marvel movies are really like kind of for anybody, maybe like 10 to 60 or 100 or whatever. Like, it's not geared towards children the way, you know, some old comic movies might have been. Or even like, well, I was going to say even Shazam, but I feel like Shazam's pretty still falls pretty well into the like young adult
it's rated PG-13, so it's like aimed at 13 and up. So what 13-year-old is like sitting there cracking up about a teacher dropping his camera in the water?
Right.
Like an adult's not laughing at that. The kid's not laughing at that.
Nope.
It doesn't matter to the story.
Nope.
It kind of felt like something they thought up on the set. Like they were like, "Oh, what if Martin Starr like is like fumbling with his camera? All right, we'll use it. We'll shoot it." And then they were like, "I guess we'll just put it in the movie."
Well, and
like,
it feels a bit out of place.
It does, yeah. It's like they went, like I was watching the credits, and I was like, they went to all these places to shoot, and I was like, that's cool. That like this movie really does do a lot of world hopping, which I really appreciated. It's not like they made Atlanta, Georgia look like Venice. Like they really went to Venice to shoot the movie, and it does have that travel around the world feel to it, almost like a James Bond kind of traveling around the world feel, but. I mean, to what point? Really? What was my next point going to be? I did not care for Nick Fury in this movie. And then at the end, at the end credits, it gets revealed that Nick Fury and Maria Hill are not really Nick Fury and Maria Hill. They're just Skrulls.
Yeah. Dressed
up as them, which is why Nick Fury is an idiot in this movie. And I was like, oh, that's dumb.
Yeah.
To what point? You know, like why? And I guess it's to set up like Nick Fury's working with the Skrulls on some other planet now, like for a future Marvel movie. But like, why did we just spend 2 hours with fake Nick Fury while he gave away all the world's secrets to some lunatic?
Yeah, well, and the whole, like, I understand why Mysterio might want to set up Peter Parker to, like, kind of be in charge of things, like have him make decisions and stuff so that he feels the pressure and then wants to give up and give over the glasses of power. But it seems dumb. And whether Nick Fury is, you know, himself or he's a Skrull or whatever, I'm like, it just seemed weird throughout the movie where I was like, what's up with this whole, like, Peter needs to listen and at the same time he's the guy in charge and everyone's like, come on, man, do your thing and live up to this, you know, step into these shoes that Tony Stark has left open, and at the same time they're kind of bossing him around. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel organic. It's weird.
It felt really forced, and that's another problem that I have with this movie. Is and it's a problem that I had with Endgame too, which is the relationship between Tony and Peter Parker feels really forced. Because they really don't spend that much time together. Like, they meet in Captain America Civil War, and basically Tony Stark says, "You're going to come to Germany to fight Captain America." And Peter Parker's like, "Okay."
And then he gets pissed at him, and he's like, "Yeah, this was too much. You're out."
Yeah, he's like, and then in like Homecoming, like they develop their relationship a little bit more to the point where Tony Stark fires him and takes his super suit away. And then at the end, he's like, "You want to be an Avenger?" And then Spider-Man's like, "No, I just, I want to be a neighborhood. I'm not ready for it." And then 2 weeks later, Thanos attacks Earth, and Spider-Man's like, "Well, I guess I'll go on a space adventure with my good friend Tony, Mr. Stark." And now I'm an Avenger, and I got snapped away, and there's one picture of me and Tony Stark, and Tony Stark's like, "Oh, this is my long lost, like my
surrogate son."
Thank you. And it's like there's no time for this relationship between the two of them to develop to the point where Tony Stark decides that Peter Parker is the future of Stark Industries, basically.
Yeah. The next Iron Man would probably be Don Cheadle.
I don't know about that, because he's like an Air Force military guy, and Stark wanted to not make military weapons anymore. But like as far as genius, like a genius inventor, philanthropist, billionaire, like that's not who Peter Parker is. He hasn't been groomed for this at all. And and I know Stark was taken too soon, kind of a thing, but the love relationship that they have between the two of them, it just doesn't work. Like it's like they decided in the last movie, it's like they decided in Endgame that the two of them became best friends. And over the 5 years that Peter Parker was gone from the snap, Tony decided, "Oh man, I wish my good friend Peter was here the whole time, because I love that kid that I spent 3 days with."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty forced too.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could probably debate on the whole, like, what's the Don Cheadle character's name?
Rhodes, Jim Rhodes, War Machine.
Yeah, War Machine. Like, we could probably debate on that a bit. And I think, no, I've never seen Iron Man 3, but I think that what you're saying feels like it would apply more with the first. What's going on there?
Oh, it's lunchtime, so they're rolling balls.
Oh, what? It's weird because it sounds like it's like happening like at your desk, but the kids sound very far away. Anyway, sorry, listeners. Listeners are like, I'm not hearing any of this.
I have very loud children,
but they're throwing their voices, but sounds that aren't their voices. Anyway, doesn't matter. The War Machine, like in the first one, when he's played by the other guy, it seems like there was a lot of that, like, "Hey, I'm a military guy," and there's this kind of dispute here. But after that, once it's Don Cheadle, I feel like they're best friends, and then like especially in Civil War when he gets injured, like that moment, Tony Stark seems legit upset. And the background sort of makes sense to it. It's like, oh, okay, I can see why he's so angry about this happening. Even though, duh, what do you expect? But so when he dies, if he's going to pass it off to somebody, I feel like it wouldn't be Spider-Man.
Yeah, and the other thing, Spider-Man's 15 or 16 years old.
Right.
He's still just a child. And the fact that you got Nick Fury telling him, like, "You're in charge now, make a decision." And he's like, "I don't want to. I want to go on my trip. I'm on vacation." And Nick Fury's like, "Fine, go." And then he does, and then he just changes his trip to manipulate him. And it works, but it doesn't work. It's too unbelievable, I guess. And or over the top.
I think it's like it's entertaining enough, even though it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I really like Tom Holland. I think he's terrific.
Yeah, he's great.
I I do get a little sick of his breathless talking. Like, I think that's because he's British. And I think that's how he gets into his New York accent or whatever, is that he's always like out of breath when he's talking, where he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm from New York. I'm not British. And, but like, that's how he always talks, is he's always like real breathless. Mm-hmm. And like, I feel that it's a little tiring.
I think that's his way of doing young.
Yeah, that's probably.
I don't know about the accent, but in terms of like seeming like a kid, I think that's that. But I know what you're talking about, because it does wear on you after a while, and it's not that Tom Holland's not likable, because he's super charming, or charismatic anyway.
And I also really liked Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie. I thought he was great.
Which brings me to a question.
He does.
Yeah, go ahead.
He does. Jake Gyllenhaal has a Muppet mouth.
Yep.
And once you see it, you can't not see it. It's like the minute he starts talking in this movie, I wanted to send you a text. I saved it till after the movie to send you the text, but his mouth is so unnatural looking.
I swear it's like bad CGI, except it's reality.
His mouth is either opened or closed, and it's like Terrence and Phillip on South Park.
Yeah.
But I did really enjoy him, especially once he makes the turn to bad guy. Mm-hmm. Some of that stuff, like some of those jokes were really forced, but what really cracked me up was the cape sequence where that lady's like steaming his cape for his like presentation suit or whatever. And like everything's going wrong, and she keeps going, do I keep working on the cape? And he's like, we're gonna need the cape. I thought that was very funny. I enjoyed that, even though it was stupid. I still liked it. And then the other thing I really liked was the return of J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. That was a total surprise for me. I had no idea. Like, and that was like, I like threw my fist in the air in the theater, because he's the perfect J. Jonah Jameson. I thought that was great. And then I like how they set up like the next movie or whatever, where they just give away Spider-Man's identity or whatnot, and they frame him for Mysterio's murder. And I was like, oh man, I can't wait for this next movie. What's going to happen? But like when J.K. Simmons starts talking as like angry J. Jonah Jameson / Rush Limbaugh or whatever he's supposed to be.
Yeah, like Alex Jones type thing.
Yeah, he's just some lunatic with a microphone now because nobody buys newspapers. And I was like, this is perfect. Wonderful. Well done. I loved it. I love that part. And it got me really excited for the next Spider-Man movie, which will hopefully take place in New York.
Well, and hopefully won't be, I don't know, filler between one movie and another, or just a setup for like the next movie. Because some movies do this more than others. I wouldn't say it's every single movie, and I wouldn't say it's every single Marvel movie, but some of them definitely feel more like, okay, I just watched a 2-hour preview for a next movie, or like introduction, and. I felt like this movie was overall a lot of filler.
This movie, I think what this movie really lacks, and it's kind of the same problem that I have with Ant-Man and the Wasp, where Ant-Man and the Wasp was made, and it's fine, but it definitely is like, it's more of like a palate cleanser after like the downer that was Infinity War. So, like, you watched Infinity War, and you're like, wow, now I'm really sad about everything. And then you watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, and you're like, oh, this is supposed to make me happy about these movies again, but, like, the jokes just don't land super great.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, at least they tried something different. And it's just like filler before Captain Marvel and then Endgame. And then this movie just kind of feels like, well, we just finished our magnum opus. Here's a Spider-Man movie to tide you over till we figure out what we're doing next. Like, I think the one thing this movie really lacks is like the direction going forward for Marvel, because I think when they started making it, they hadn't really figured out what Phase 4 was going to be, and how it would impact the movie. So they kind of just made, and to their credit, they made kind of a standalone movie. which is not really what any of the Marvel movies have been lately. Like, this movie, aside from the main plot of people disappearing for 5 years and the death of Iron Man, this movie kind of can stand alone.
Yeah, it does feel kind of. It doesn't feel like the plot is part of a bigger plot.
Yeah, I think that's what I tried to say over 3 minutes.
Well, I could only say it because you said it first longer. But it does kind of feel like with that end scene, with the J. Jonah Jameson part, like it does kind of pull you back into, it's like, oh, okay, so we're back in this universe a little bit. You know, like it feels like it's drawing you back into a bigger picture. Which I think I want something that's more standalone, but once I got it and it wasn't very good, I was like, all right, fine, go back into this universe then, because you seem to know what you're doing better there.
Yeah, stick with what works. Go ahead.
And I'm done with Happy Hogan. I don't need to see his face at all anymore.
See, I like him. I don't have I definitely did not care for the sequence at the end when they're in like the Tower of London or whatever, and that drone is hunting them down.
Yeah, and
they all start sharing their secrets or whatever, and I'm like, this is a waste of time.
Yep. It's
not funny. I'm not feeling it. I know they're not going to die. What? Okay. And it's over. But I did like the part where he's like, we all need to get on the jet and get out of here. I'm with Spider-Man. And the one, I think Flash Thompson's like, you work for Spider-Man? He's like, I work with Spider-Man. I thought that was funny. I thought that was pretty good.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
I did not care for the Happy Hogan Aunt May relationship thing.
Yeah, it's just too much.
That felt really forced, but they also didn't really do anything with it. And then at the end, when Peter confronts them about it for like 3 seconds, and they're like, yeah, we're just kind of banging. And he's like, okay, I got to go be Spider-Man now. And he just leaves after sitting them down to have a conversation. I'm like, okay, I get it. Fine. So I got a lot of problems with this movie. And all that being said, I did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty fun. I liked it more than Ant-Man and the Wasp. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely a better Marvel movie. It's more of a middle of the road, I think, for me.
Yeah.
It's definitely a sequel to the first Spider-Man movie, like as far as like the letdown from the first one. But that doesn't say it was bad. It wasn't bad. It just doesn't live up to the pedigree before it.
Yeah, it's very mediocre.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, Matt. That's all I have for Spider-Man. Have you anything more?
No, I don't think so. I will say the further I get from it, the more, I guess the less goodwill I offer it.
Uh-huh.
And the what was bad about it stands out more. But I do think, like when you talk about like the Mysterio stuff, and I'm not exactly a Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I'm not even sure I really like him. I think as a person, he seems from the bits I've gotten here and there, he seems like he's probably a super nice guy. But I don't really like care for his acting that much.
Uh-huh.
But in this, I felt like he was kind of a highlight of the movie. And so, and I do like MJ. I forget what Zendaya, I think is the name of the girl who plays her.
I think you're right.
I like her. I like what she does. I like her and Tom Holland, their interactions and stuff. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. That's all.
All right. Well, that means it's time for our favorite segment on the show, our movie rankings list. Now, Matt, you watched Clash of the Titans, and I'm excited to see where this is going to end up.
I am putting this probably a lot higher on my list than it deserves to be. Uh-huh. I'm putting it between Creep 2 and The Founder.
Wow, you're putting it Wow. I feel like that's much lower than it was going to go. I had that going. I had it going above Dark Phoenix or Snowpiercer.
Oh no. No. Snowpiercer was better.
Did you know there's a Snowpiercer TV show?
I was going to actually mention that to you, and boy, does it not look like it does anything that the movie didn't.
Yeah, it looks exactly like the movie.
Yeah.
Like, they even have the sequence where the guy gets his arm frozen off, and I'm like, I've seen this, and it was awesome. Now, how many stars for Clash of the Titans? Or I wrote down Clash of the Snowpiercer.
Clash of the Titans is... Well, that's all right, because when I was typing it in, I first spelled it out as Titans, like as when you tighten something. Like T-I-G-H-T. Anyway, Clash of the Titans is going. It's going to get 2 stars. I think is good.
2 stars. Wow. In the middle of 3 and 3.5, 3.5s and 4s.
That's right. It is not a good movie.
And then it gets a solid recommendation.
That's great. What's great is I'm looking at your list, and 5 places down is The Changeling, which has a 4-star rating. It's number 30. All right, great. Now to my list, Nick's movie ranking list. Spider-Man: Far From Home. Now, where am I going to put this?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. Was it better than Captain Marvel? No. No. It wasn't. But it was better than Bumblebee. No. I think I liked Bumblebee more. Christ.
I'm going to say I think Bumblebee was had less filler.
It might not have had high of highs
filler,
except for that first 4 minutes. But as far as the lows, I don't remember having as many moments where I was like, come on.
Yeah, and the moments that were filler in Bumblebee were pretty fun.
But
Like there's that sequence in Bumblebee where John Cena's talking about the Decepticons, and he's like, they're called Decepticons. Should we really be trusting them?
Right. The jokes actually kind of land.
Yeah. And I'm going to give this movie 2.5 stars. But it is a recommend. I would recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's 2.5 in a sea of 3. Okay, well, that wraps up that segment of the show. Matt, anything for Midwest Matt recommends this week?
Well, I guess you and I were talking about this offline. Later this month, August 30th, the new Tool album's going to be coming out. And for those of you who don't know, Tool, who have resisted being on streaming services for years, as of August 2nd, are available on all the streaming services. So you can listen to your Tool albums now.
Yeah, and I read that, since they did that, they've been the #1 band across the board.
Oh, I'll bet.
Which was a great marketing move before the new album.
There's one thing that you can't get on there that is an album that's out. They have an album called Salival that came along with a DVD set for their music videos. I think all before the Lateralus album. And that's got some really good tracks on it. So there are a few tracks that are not available on the streaming services that are really good. But if you're just looking to listen to their released albums in full, they're available now. So check them out.
All right, Tool. I would also recommend them. They're terrific.
Yeah. How about you?
All right, me. I think I'm going to recommend the This Week in Film webpage. Which I'm having trouble with.
A little self-serving, but all right.
Every week on Nick Recommends, I don't have a cool nickname. Every week on Nick Recommends, I recommend the This Week in Film website called thisweekinfilm.com. And but it hasn't been updated in a few weeks because I'm having issues with WordPress where I type stuff but I can't see it. So it's been very confusing. But that's technical problems, and that's a totally different show. But anyway, the Midwest Matt section has been updated every week, so you can still check that out. But if you're looking for our weekly post, it has not been there. So sorry about that. We're going to get things straightened out, and then you can check it out. All right, well, if that is the end of the reel, we will see you next week in film.
See you then.